I thought my older sister was just being friendly to my husband until she started calling me 10 times before every family gathering just to ask one question: Is Jason coming? Then she accidentally sent a text message to the wrong person, a message that was meant for my husband. And that's when I realized my own sister wasn't interested in spending time with me at all. She was obsessed with my husband. My name is Sarah, and for the longest time, I thought I was one of those women who simply wasn't jealous. I trusted my husband completely, or at least I thought I did. Jason and I had been married for 6 years. We lived in a quiet suburb outside Charlotte with our 3-year-old son, Noah. Life wasn't perfect, but it was good. Jason was handsome, the kind of handsome that made strangers remember him. Tall, dark hair, blue eyes, confident without trying. Women noticed him everywhere. At restaurants, at grocery stores, at birthday parties. Honestly, it never bothered me, mostly because Jason always came home to me. Besides, I got attention too. I wasn't exactly invisible. If a guy looked at me for too long at a coffee shop, Jason would notice immediately. Sometimes he'd get annoyed. Sometimes he'd pretend he wasn't annoyed, but he always noticed. I used to think it was kinda cute. Now I'm not so sure. Everything started after I reconnected with some distant relatives, people I hadn't seen in years. One of them was my older sister, Rebecca. She was 4 years older than me and had recently gone through a messy divorce. We've never been especially close growing up. Not enemies, just different. Rebecca always loved attention. The louder the room, the happier she was. The more people looking at her, the better. Meanwhile, I preferred smaller circles. Quiet dinners, movie nights, simple things. Still, she was my sister. And after years apart, I wanted to rebuild that relationship. Looking back, I wish I hadn't. The first family gathering happened at my aunt's house. Nothing fancy, just food, drinks, and relatives trying to remember everyone's names. Jason came with me. Most of the family had never met him before, including Rebecca. She arrived almost an hour late. Typical Rebecca. The second she walked through the door, everyone noticed. She always made an entrance. I introduced her to Jason. Rebecca, this is my husband, Jason. The moment they shook hands, something felt off. Not obvious, not enough to call out, but enough for me to notice. Because women notice these things. Her smile lasted a little too long. Her eyes stayed on him a little too long. And when she laughed at something he said, it felt exaggerated, almost performative. At the time, I ignored it. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe. Dinner started. Everyone gathered around the table, and somehow Rebecca ended up sitting directly across from Jason. The entire evening she focused on him. Where do you work? How long have you been married? Do you like Charlotte? What do you do for fun? Do you travel? Do you golf? Do you watch football? Do you cook? At first it seemed harmless. Jason answered politely, sometimes joking, sometimes teasing. Everyone laughed. No big deal. But then I realized something strange. She barely asked me anything. It was like I wasn't even sitting there. The conversation kept circling back to Jason. Again, and again, and again. By the time we left, a weird feeling had settled into my stomach. Not jealousy. Not yet. Just discomfort. A few weeks later, Rebecca came to our house. That's when things became harder to ignore. Jason had just finished mowing the lawn and was putting tools away when Rebecca arrived. The second she walked through the front door, she looked around and asked, "Where's Jason?" Not, "Hello?" Not, "How are you?" Not, "Where's Noah?" Just Jason. I remember exchanging a glance with him. He looked confused. So was I. A few minutes later, he went upstairs to change for work. Before leaving, he kissed me goodbye. Normal married couple stuff. Nothing unusual. Rebecca watched the whole thing, and for some reason, it made me uncomfortable. After Jason left, Rebecca suddenly became interested in helping with Noah. Now, and here's the thing. Rebecca wasn't exactly the nurturing type. She liked kids, but from a distance. Yet suddenly, she wanted to carry Noah everywhere. Play with him. Hold him. Show him things. At one point, she nearly stumbled while holding him because she was looking toward the driveway, toward Jason's truck, watching him leave. It was weird, really weird. That evening after work, Jason said something that surprised me. Don't leave Noah alone with your sister. I looked up from the dishes. What? Just don't. Why? He shrugged. Bad feeling. I laughed. You barely know her. I know. Then why? Jason hesitated, then said something I didn't expect. Because she wasn't paying attention to Noah. What do you mean? She was paying attention to me. The comment stuck with me, but I still pushed it aside. I didn't want to believe my own sister would flirt with my husband. Who wants to think that? A month later came the birthday party, the party that changed everything. Before the event, Rebecca called me. Once. Twice. 5 times. 9 times. Every conversation somehow led to the same question. Is Jason coming? At first, I didn't think anything of it. Then it became impossible not to notice. Every call, every text, every conversation, same question. Is Jason coming? Not. Are you coming? Not. Will Noah be there? Not. What should I bring? Honestly, she didn't care, because every conversation somehow came back to one person. Jason. 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 When we finally arrived at the party, I started paying attention, really paying attention, and once I did, I couldn't stop seeing it. The second Rebecca spotted Jason, she practically abandoned everyone else. She followed conversations, he joined, laughed harder at his jokes than anyone else, positioned herself near him constantly. If he moved to another part of the room, somehow she ended up there too. At one point, people started dancing. Rebecca appeared right beside him. Not beside me, beside him. Jason. Jason looked uncomfortable. I could tell, but he wasn't stopping it either, and that bothered me a lot. Later that evening, I overheard a conversation. Rebecca asked him about his upcoming weekend. Then the following weekend. Then the weekend after that. Questions. More questions. Always questions. Finally, Jason laughed and said, "What are you trying to schedule a private interview?" Rebecca immediately blushed. Actually blushed. No! The answer came way too fast. Jason laughed. Everyone laughed. The conversation moved on, but I sat there frozen, one thought repeating in my head. Why would they ever need to talk separately? And more importantly, why was my husband comfortable making jokes like that? That night, lying in bed, memories started resurfacing. Things I had ignored, things I had dismissed, things I suddenly saw differently. Like the time my best friend called me giggling. Guess what your husband said today? What? He joked about taking me to a sauna. I laughed back then, thought it was harmless. No, not so much. Then there were all the little comments, the playful teasing, the attention, the charm, the way Jason seemed to enjoy making women laugh, even women who shouldn't matter, especially women who shouldn't matter. And suddenly I found myself wondering something I'd never wondered before. Maybe Rebecca wasn't the only problem. Maybe Jason liked being chased. That realization hit me harder than anything else. Because if a random woman flirted with my husband, that wasn't his fault. But if he encouraged it, if he enjoyed it, if he kept the door open just enough, that was different. Very different. And for the first time in 6 years, I felt jealous. Not because I thought he'd cheat. I genuinely didn't. But because I started seeing something I had ignored for years. Jason loved attention, especially female attention. And maybe, just maybe, he liked it a little too much. That night after the party, I barely slept. Jason was snoring beside me like nothing had happened. Meanwhile, my brain was running a marathon. Every weird interaction, every joke, every look, every little thing I'd brushed off over the years suddenly came rushing back. And the worst part? I wasn't sure who I was more upset with, Rebecca, or Jason. The next morning, I decided to test something, not in a manipulative way. At least that's what I told myself. We were eating breakfast when I casually asked, "So, what do you think about Rebecca?" Jason looked up from his coffee. "What about her?" "Just curious." He shrugged. "She's your sister." "That's not what I asked." He raised an eyebrow. I could tell he'd already sensed danger. "Okay." I waited. "She's outgoing." I kept staring. "Very outgoing." I kept staring. Jason sighed. "What answer are you looking for?" I wasn't sure. Maybe I wanted reassurance. Maybe I wanted him to say she was annoying. Maybe I wanted him to say he barely noticed her. Instead, he said, "Honestly?" I nodded. She tries really hard to get attention. My stomach tightened. "From everyone?" Jason looked at me for a second, then answered carefully, "No." That was all he said. No. For some reason, that answer bothered me more than if he'd denied everything, because it confirmed what I already suspected. He saw it too. A few days later, I met my best friend Megan for coffee. Megan had known me since college. She was the kind of friend who would tell you the truth even when you didn't want to hear it. Halfway through our second latte, I finally told her everything. The family dinners, the phone calls, the dancing, the questions, the way Rebecca practically orbited Jason whenever he entered a room. Megan listened quietly. Then she asked, "Can I be honest? Please." I noticed something years ago. I immediately sat up straighter. "What?" She hesitated, then sighed. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to cause problems. My stomach dropped. "Megan, Jason flirts." I blinked. "What?" "He doesn't mean to." The answer came quickly, almost defensively, "But he does." I felt heat rise in my face. "No, he doesn't." She gave me a look. The look only best friends can give. The one that says, "You're lying to yourself." Then she reminded me of something I'd completely forgotten. 3 years earlier, a 4th of July barbecue. One of Megan's coworkers had spent half the afternoon talking to Jason. At the time, I hadn't noticed. Apparently, everyone else had. According to Megan, the woman practically followed him around all day. And Jason, instead of shutting it down, he entertained it. Not aggressively, not disrespectfully, just enough. Just enough to keep her interested. That phrase stayed in my head. Just enough. When I got home, I found Jason in the backyard throwing a football with Noah. The sight immediately softened me. Because that's the problem with marriage. People aren't villains. They're complicated. Jason wasn't some cheating husband. He was a good father, a hardworking husband, a loyal partner. But maybe he had flaws I didn't want to acknowledge. That evening, I asked him another question. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you like attention from women?" He laughed immediately. Wrong answer. The fact that he laughed irritated me. "I'm serious." The smile faded. He looked thoughtful, then said, "I think everyone likes attention. That's not what I asked." Jason rubbed the back of his neck. "I don't know." I crossed my arms. "Try." He sighed. "Maybe?" The honesty surprised me. "Why?" He looked genuinely confused. "What do you mean, why?" "You're married." "I know." "Then why do you need attention from other women?" Jason stared at me for several seconds, then gave an answer I wasn't expecting. "I don't need it." "Then..." He shrugged. "It feels nice." The room suddenly became very quiet. For some reason, hearing him admit it hurt. Not because he was cheating. Not because he wanted someone else. Because he liked validation from women who weren't me. And maybe I'd always known that. Over the next couple weeks, I started noticing things everywhere. Little things. Tiny things. Things that seemed harmless individually. But together, different story. At the grocery store, a cashier complimented Jason's eyes. Instead of saying thanks and moving on, he spent 2 minutes joking with her. At Noah's daycare, one of the moms started chatting with him. Same thing. At a neighborhood barbecue. Same thing. Every single time. Jason wasn't pursuing anyone, but he wasn't ending the interactions either. He seemed to enjoy them. Then came Rebecca's birthday dinner, and that's when things escalated. The entire evening, she acted like I barely existed. She sat next to Jason, asked him questions, laughed at everything, touched his arm several times while talking, and every time she did, I noticed something. Jason moved away. Not dramatically, just enough. Tiny adjustments, tiny boundaries, tiny signs of discomfort. For the first time, my anger toward him started shifting, because suddenly I noticed something else. Rebecca wasn't just flirting. She was chasing, aggressively. Near the end of dinner, she asked Jason, "You should come hiking sometime." Jason looked confused. "With who?" "Me." The table went silent. For a second, nobody spoke. Then Rebecca quickly added, "And Sarah, obviously." Too late. Everyone had heard the first part, including me, including Jason. Jason immediately laughed awkwardly. "Yeah, that's definitely not happening." Rebecca forced a smile, but I saw embarrassment flash across her face. Real embarrassment. For the first time. Later, while driving home, neither of us spoke. The silence felt heavy. Finally, Jason broke it. "Okay." I looked over. "What?" Even I noticed that one. I almost laughed. Almost. Then he surprised me again. "I think your sister has a crush on me." There it was. The sentence neither of us wanted to say out loud. Finally spoken. The weird part? Hearing it didn't make me feel better. It made me feel worse. Because if Jason could see it, then it wasn't in my head. That night, my phone buzzed around midnight. A text message from Rebecca. At first, I assumed it was meant for me. Then I opened it, and my stomach dropped. Because the message wasn't for me. It was for Jason, and somehow she'd accidentally sent it to the wrong person. Me. The message read, "Had fun tonight. Maybe next time we can talk without all the interruptions, LOL." I stared at the screen, reading it over and over. Again, and again, and again. My hands started shaking, because suddenly, everything changed. I must have read that text message 20 times. Then 30. Then 50. Each time hoping I'd somehow misunderstood it. Maybe it wasn't flirtatious. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe there was context I didn't know about. But deep down, I knew exactly what it meant. Had fun tonight. Maybe next time we can talk without all the interruptions, LOL. The interruptions. That was me. I was the interruption. His wife? Her sister. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at my phone while Jason slept beside me. My heart felt heavy. Not broken. Not yet. But something had definitely shifted. For the first time. I wasn't questioning whether Rebecca was interested in my husband. I knew she was. The real question was, how far was she willing to go? The next morning, I showed Jason the message. His reaction surprised me. He looked genuinely confused, then annoyed, then uncomfortable. "What the hell?" That was his first response. Not defensive, not guilty, confused. I watched him carefully, looking for signs, anything. But he looked exactly how I'd expect someone to look after receiving. I had a text like that from his wife's sister. "Did you respond?" I asked. "No." "You didn't text her?" "No." "You swear?" He handed me his phone. Immediately. No hesitation. "Look." I checked. Nothing. No secret conversations. No deleted messages. No suspicious apps. Nothing. The last text from Rebecca was weeks old. A family group message. That was it. For the first time in weeks, some of my anger toward Jason started fading. Not disappearing, but fading. Because if he was hiding something, he was doing an incredible job. And Jason had never been good at lying. Meanwhile, Rebecca was another story. 3 days later, she called. Like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't accidentally revealed herself. Like everything was normal. I almost didn't answer, but I did. And within 2 minutes, she asked the question again. The same question. The question she always asked. Is Jason there? Not. How are you? Not. How's Noah? Not. What are you doing? Jason. Always Jason. Something inside me finally snapped. Why? Silence. What? Why are you always asking about my husband? The line went quiet. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she laughed. Too loudly. Too quickly. The fake kind of laugh people use when they're nervous. Don't be ridiculous. I wasn't buying it anymore. That conversation ended badly. Very badly. By the time we hung up, we were both irritated. And for the first time in years, I realized something uncomfortable. Rebecca wasn't treating me like a sister. She was treating me like competition. That thought stayed with me. And once it entered my head, I started remembering things from childhood. Things I'd forgotten. Or maybe ignored. Rebecca always needed to be first. First place. First choice. First priority. If I got praise, she needed more. If I got attention, she needed all of it. If someone complimented me, she'd immediately redirect the conversation to herself. At the time, I thought that was normal sibling behavior. Now I wasn't so sure. A week later, I met my mom for lunch. I hadn't planned on bringing any of this up, but somehow it happened. Halfway through our meal, I casually asked, "Has Rebecca always been competitive?" Mom nearly choked on her iced tea. That answer alone told me everything. "Oh, honey." The words came out slowly, carefully, like she was debating whether to continue. "What?" Mom sighed. "Your sister has always struggled when other women got attention." I stared at her. "What does that mean?" Mom looked away, then back at me. "It means if someone complimented you, she'd spend all day trying to get a bigger compliment." I felt my stomach tighten, because that sounded exactly right. Exactly. Then Mom told me something I didn't know. Years ago, back in college, Rebecca had briefly dated a guy one of her friends liked. Not because she wanted him, because her friend wanted him. The relationship lasted 3 weeks. Then she dumped him. Apparently it destroyed the friendship. Why would she do that? Mom looked tired. Older, somehow. Some people need validation more than others. The answer stuck with me. Validation, attention, admiration, being chosen, being wanted, and suddenly another thought appeared, one I didn't like, one that made me uncomfortable. Rebecca wasn't in love with Jason. Not really. She barely knew him. What she wanted was to prove she could have him. That realization hit differently because it wasn't romantic. It was ego, and ego can be dangerous. A few days later, things escalated again. This time through social media, Jason posted a family photo. Nothing unusual. Just me, him, and Noah at the zoo. A normal family picture. The kind people post every day. Within 10 minutes, Rebecca commented, "Sarah looks great. Perfectly normal." Then another comment appeared. "Jason somehow looks even better than before." That one felt different. The replies started immediately. Friends laughing, family members reacting. Most people ignored it, but I didn't. Because I knew the pattern now. Everything was becoming obvious. That night, I finally asked Jason something I'd been avoiding. "Be honest." He looked up from the TV. "Okay. Do you enjoy the attention?" His expression changed immediately, because he knew exactly what attention I meant. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he sighed and said something that caught me completely off guard. "Maybe?" The honesty hurt, but I appreciated it. "I don't want her." "That's not what I asked." "I know." He rubbed his forehead, looking frustrated. "I'm being honest." I waited. Jason leaned back, thinking carefully, then finally said, "Do I enjoy feeling attractive?" "Yes." "Do I enjoy compliments?" "Yes." "Do I enjoy attention sometimes?" Another pause. "Yeah." At least he wasn't lying. Then he looked directly at me. "But that doesn't mean I want her." I believed him. That wasn't the problem anymore. The problem was something else, something harder to define. Because while Rebecca was clearly crossing boundaries, Jason wasn't exactly shutting the door either. He wasn't inviting her in, but he wasn't slamming the door shut. And maybe that was enough encouragement for someone like Rebecca. The following Saturday proved exactly that. Because that's the day Rebecca showed up at our house unannounced. And what happened next changed everything. She wasn't there to see me. She was there to see Jason. And this time, she finally admitted it. Jason looked uncomfortable. Again. Not guilty, not interested, just uncomfortable. The kind of uncomfortable someone gets when they're trapped in a conversation they didn't ask for. "Oh, wow," Rebecca said, running her hand along the motorcycle seat. "I didn't know you knew how to work on bikes." Jason shrugged. "My dad taught me." "That's so attractive." The garage went silent. Completely silent. Even Jason froze for a second. I stood in the doorway, watching, waiting, because now there was no misunderstanding. No innocent explanation. No way to explain that comment away. Rebecca noticed me standing there, for the first time since arriving, and instead of looking embarrassed, she smiled, like nothing unusual had happened, like she hadn't just called my husband attractive to his face, in front of me. Jason cleared his throat. "Sarah, can I talk to you for a minute?" That surprised me. I followed him into the kitchen. The moment we were alone, he looked exhausted. "Okay." "Wait, your sister is making me uncomfortable." I blinked. For weeks, I'd been waiting for him to say that. Now that he finally had, I didn't know what to do with it. "What happened?" Jason laughed nervously. "Everything." He ran a hand through his hair. "She's constantly texting." My stomach dropped. "Texting?" He nodded. "Not anything inappropriate." "Then why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want family drama." That answer made me angry. Not because he'd hidden anything terrible, because he'd hidden something at all. "Show me." Without hesitation, he handed me his phone. I opened the messages and immediately felt sick. The texts weren't romantic. Not directly. That was the problem. They lived in a gray area, the dangerous area, the area where people pretend nothing is happening. "Hope work isn't stressing you out too much. That blue shirt looked great on you at the party." "Sarah is lucky. You should smile more." "How's the motorcycle project going?" "You and I seem to be the only normal people in this family, LOL." Dozens of messages. Weeks worth. Always starting conversations. Always finding excuses. Always reaching out first. And Jason? Mostly one-word responses, thumbs-up reactions, short answers. Nothing flirty, nothing inappropriate, but also nothing that shut it down. "Why didn't you stop it?" I asked quietly. Jason looked ashamed. "Honestly?"
Yeah.
I thought if I ignored most of it, she'd eventually stop. I stared at him. "That's your plan?" He sighed. "No." "Then what was your plan?" He didn't have an answer. Because there wasn't one. He'd been avoiding conflict, the same way I'd been avoiding reality. That evening, after Rebecca finally left, Jason and I had the first real conversation we'd had in weeks. The uncomfortable kind, the honest kind, the kind married people sometimes avoid because it's easier. "Not to look too closely. I think I messed up." He said it quietly, almost to himself. "How?" "I should have shut it down earlier." I nodded. "Yes, I know." He looked genuinely frustrated with himself. I thought being polite was the right thing to do, not when someone keeps crossing boundaries. Jason leaned back in his chair, then said something that surprised me. "You know what the worst part is? Wit. I thought you trusted me enough not to worry." For a second, I didn't know how to respond, because that was true. I had trusted him completely. Maybe too completely. Trust isn't the issue. He looked at me. "It isn't?" "No." I shook my head. "The issue is respect." The room became very quiet. "I trust you not to cheat." I continued. "I don't trust you to recognize when someone is trying to insert themselves into our marriage." That one hit him. I could see it. For several seconds, he didn't speak. Then finally, he nodded. Slowly. "You might be right." The next day, Everything exploded. I was grocery shopping when my phone rang. It was my mother, and she sounded panicked. "Sarah? What happened?" "It's Rebecca." My stomach immediately tightened. "What now?" Mom hesitated, then said, "She told me she's in love with Jason." I nearly dropped the phone. "What?" My voice came out louder than intended. People in the grocery aisle turned around. I didn't care. Mom sounded exhausted. I wish I was joking. Apparently, Rebecca had shown up at Mom's house crying. Actually crying, talking about how she'd never felt this way before. How Jason was different. How he understood her. How he was kind, funny, stable. Everything her ex-husband wasn't. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Because Jason barely talked to her. Most of their conversations lasted less than 5 minutes. This wasn't love. It was fantasy, a dangerous fantasy. Then Mom told me something else. Something that explained far more than I wanted. Rebecca's divorce had been worse than anyone realized. Her ex-husband hadn't cheated, hadn't abused her, hadn't abandoned her. He'd simply stopped paying attention to her. Years of emotional distance. Years of feeling invisible. Years of trying to get validation from someone who no longer gave it. And now she'd found someone else to project those needs onto. My husband. That didn't excuse anything, but suddenly it made sense. That evening, I called Rebecca. For the first time in my life, I wasn't calling as a sister. I was calling as a wife. She answered immediately, almost like she'd been expecting me. Mom told me. Silence. Then, "Oh." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I asked the question, the one that had been building for months. "Do you actually think Jason wants you?" The silence that followed told me everything. Because if she had confidently believed the answer was yes, she would have said it immediately. Instead, she whispered, "No." And somehow that made everything sadder. Because deep down she already knew. She knew he wasn't interested. She knew he loved me. She knew there was no future. And yet she couldn't stop. "Then why are you doing this?" I asked. Her answer came out broken, almost childlike. "Because when he talks to me," she paused, crying now, "I feel important." And for the first time since all of this started, I wasn't angry. I was just tired. Because this had never really been about Jason. It had never really been about me. It was about a woman so desperate for validation that she was willing to destroy her relationship with her own sister to get it. And now we had to decide what happened next. After my phone call with Rebecca, I sat in the living room for almost an hour, staring at nothing. No TV, no phone, no music, just silence. Because for the first time, I understood something. Rebecca wasn't trying to steal my husband because she loved him. She was trying to fill a hole inside herself. And people like that are dangerous, not because they're evil, because they're desperate. When Jason got home from work, I told him everything, every word, every confession, every tear, every excuse. He listened quietly, then shook his head. "I feel bad for her." I nodded. "So do I." Then he added, "But that doesn't make this okay." That was the first time in weeks we were completely on the same page. 3 days later, Rebecca asked if we could meet. In person, just us. No family, no parents, no distractions. Part of me wanted to refuse. Part of me wanted to block her number forever. But another part of me needed closure. So I agreed. We met at a small coffee shop downtown, the kind of place where people pretend to work on laptops for 6 hours after buying one drink. Rebecca was already there when I arrived, and she looked terrible, not physically, emotionally. Her eyes were swollen. Her makeup was uneven. Her shoulders slumped. For the first time in my life, she looked defeated. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, she broke the silence. "I'm sorry." I stared at her, waiting. "I'm really sorry." For some reason, hearing it didn't make me feel better. Because apologies don't erase months of behavior. They don't erase betrayal. They don't erase trust. Why him? I finally asked. Rebecca laughed sadly, a broken laugh. It wasn't really him. That answer surprised me. She looked down at her coffee, then quietly said, Jason became everything I felt like I lost. I frowned. What does that mean? She swallowed hard. When Mark left, her ex-husband, I felt invisible. I stayed silent. He stopped noticing me years before the divorce. Her voice cracked. No compliments, no affection, no attention, nothing. I could hear the pain in her voice. Real pain. Years of it. And then I met Jason. She laughed bitterly. He looked at you the way Mark used to look at me. That hit me harder than I expected. Because suddenly I wasn't looking at the annoying sister who crossed boundaries. I was looking at a woman who had spent years feeling unwanted. But sympathy doesn't erase accountability. You still crossed a line. Rebecca nodded immediately. I know. No. I leaned forward. You don't. Her eyes widened. You didn't just disrespect me. I felt years of frustration finally bubbling out. You make me question my marriage. You made family gatherings miserable. You put me in a position where I started doubting someone who never actually gave me a reason to. Tears filled her eyes, but I kept going. Do you know how unfair that was? She started crying, quietly, and for once. I didn't rush to comfort her, because this wasn't my responsibility anymore. After nearly an hour of talking, one thing became clear. Rebecca genuinely regretted what she'd done, but regret doesn't automatically rebuild trust. Before we left, she asked the question I knew was coming. Can you forgive me? I looked at her for a long moment, then answered honestly, not right now. She nodded, as if she'd expected that, and maybe she had. The next person who needed a conversation was Jason, not because he'd cheated. He hadn't, but because something still bothered me. That evening, after Noah went to bed, we sat on the back patio. The summer air was warm, the neighborhood quiet. I need you to understand something, I said. Jason nodded. When women flirt with you, he immediately groaned. Sarah? No. I raised a hand. Listen. He stopped talking. If someone repeatedly crosses boundaries. I took a breath. I need you to stop worrying about being polite. He looked thoughtful. Okay. I'm serious. He nodded. I know. I looked directly at him. Because your politeness created space. The words hung there, and after a few seconds, he nodded again. You're right. No arguing. No defensiveness. No excuses. Just honesty. I should have shut it down sooner. For the first time in months, I felt the tension leave my chest, because that's all I'd wanted. Accountability. Not perfection. Just accountability. A week later, Jason sent Rebecca a message. Short. Direct. Respectful. He told her he cared about her as family. Nothing more. He told her future. Communication should happen through group chats or family gatherings. He wished her well, and that was it. No drama, no fight, no cruelty, just a boundary. Rebecca replied with one sentence, I understand. And surprisingly, she actually respected it. Months passed, then more months. Family gatherings became less awkward. Rebecca started therapy. Mom confirmed it. Apparently, she was finally dealing with the issues she'd avoided for years. The loneliness, the validation seeking, the insecurity, all of it. Meanwhile, life slowly returned to normal. Jason and I stopped talking about the situation every week, then every month, then almost never. One night, nearly a year later, we hosted Thanksgiving. Everyone came. Mom, Dad, aunts, cousins, Rebecca. And for the first time, nothing happened. No flirting. No weird comments. No hovering around Jason. No competition. just family. At one point, I caught Rebecca helping Noah build a tower out of toy blocks. She looked happy, peaceful, different. When she noticed me watching, she smiled. A small smile. I smiled back, not because everything was fixed, because healing had finally started. Later that night, after everyone left, Jason wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "You okay?" I looked around the quiet house. The empty dishes, the leftover pie, the family photos on the wall, and for the first time in a long time, I really was. Because the truth was something I'd spent months trying to avoid. My sister wasn't trying to steal my husband. She was trying to feel chosen. And my husband wasn't trying to hurt me. He was trying too hard to be liked. Neither excuse justified what happened, but understanding it helped me move past it. Marriage isn't about preventing every problem. It's about facing them together when they happen. And family? Family is messy, complicated, painful, sometimes disappointing. But if people are willing to be honest, sometimes it's still worth fighting for.